Hi everybody, my name is Raymond Talavera, Brooklyn College student of course, studying television and radio with my advisor, Professor Brian Dunphy in the left corner. And I want to thank you all for, of course, coming here tonight for me to present to you the generation of animated tolerance. And in this project, I'm basically looking at representations of family within the cartoons in the 1960s, the 1990s, and the early 2000s. And I'm arguing that these portrayals of family are more diverse in terms of socioeconomic status, gender, race, and even just family structure in general. And furthermore, that these depictions reflect an audience that are more tolerant than those before them. So I kind of want to just start off with a paraphrasing from a media critic named Marcia Kinder. She says that the main discourse of children's media was the fear of representations of violence, homosexuality, broken families, and other things deemed detrimental to the moral upbringing of a child. I want to point out that 1960s animation was a lot about reducing imagery that kind of opposed the middle-class nuclear family. This is the Flintstone family, the most popular animated series during its time, with its characters Fred Flintstone, his wife Wilma, Pebbles, and this dinosaur doggish kind of Flint dog, Dino. We all know Dino. They make up the ideal family that was often expressed in the era's respective media. During the 1960s, it was rather rare to find a series where families would have alternative races. Or single-parent households. This was also rare. Heteronormative relationships were encouraged and gender roles were rigid. Anything that kind of broke outside of this norm would result in an uproar. That sound does not work.
It goes roar.
It goes roar. I'm sorry. Can I check the sound for a second?
Yeah. Sound check.
So guys, how was your day?
It was working before.
Was it?
Yeah. Eric broke it.
You can't blame Eric.
Blame Eric.
Please forgive me as I check if the clips work.
Is this still plugged in? Check your clips. Are they there? Huh.
So, funny thing. I'm gonna take 1 minute to attach videos into my PowerPoint. Please help yourself to a cookie or some extra as I invisibly add videos into my PowerPoint. The Flintstones and the Jetsons, the family seen in this image, the hegemonic image of the middle-class nuclear family, was what audiences was intended to root for, to identify with, and to empathize for. Tertiary characters would comment on these families' socioeconomic status by calling them poor or low class. This positions the middle-class household as the underdogs of society, despite Judy Jetson having the luxury of pressing a button to complete her housework, or the irony that Wilma Flintstone has access to credit cards even though she lives in the Stone Age, or the fact that apparently everyone in the future has a robotic maid, which would be awesome if it was actually accessible to everybody in these shows. In these shows specifically normalize middle-class lifestyle, and as a result, any other families beneath them on the socioeconomic ladder becomes invisible. Families that do not fall within the patriarchal two parents and a child model also become delegitimized through its scarce visibility on television. In short, these things become anti-ethical to the idea of the perfect television family. That is until the 1990s, and I want to really focus on this generation because I feel like this is when there was a lot of several cultural shifts that influenced multiple changes in the portrayal of families. 60s animation was exclusive in a way that they defined the perfect family, but in the 1990s, it is quite the opposite. I wanted to call this part 90s animation sort of like a revolution, one, because revolution sounds badass when you put it in a title, but more importantly, revolutions go against the status quo of an institution. They break down to the core and try to rebuild upon it. Yeah, they try to rebuild upon this social institution. 90s animation saw family as just needing to be loving and caring and nothing more. And we're gonna go right on to Hey Arnold, which is an example of a show that embodies that message and helps to redefine what it actually means to be a family. The show is set in a metropolis, which is interesting already because of its multicultural setting. Arnold, the main character, attends a public school with people from all types of cultural backgrounds and lives in a boarding house with his 2 grandparents and numerous immigrants. The members of this boarding house all rent rooms, so it's somewhat safe to assume that they are less affluent than other characters. The series, with its portrayal of various cultures, shows this diversity, but what is more significant is how these characters interact with one another in order to prove that their family counts, despite it's not coming in the traditional shape or form that television usually was prescribing to these families. So I'm going to show you a clip that works now from Hey Arnold, breaking down the concept of family to its bare minimum.
Wait a minute, that's not fair. Maybe Mr. Wynn did lie about a few things, but he only did it because you were more worried about having a head chef with a big family than you were about having a head chef who's the best cook. And the truth is, even if we aren't all actually related, we're still a family. We all live in this house together. Mr. Wynn looks out for me like an uncle. He looks out for all of us, and we look out for him. We spend holidays together, and birthdays, and whenever one of us has a problem, we help each other out. That's why we all did this, to help Mr. Wynn. We may not be a normal family, but we're still a family.
Arnold's right.
We're a family. Kinda.
Right. So they're a family, kind of. Hey Arnold is an example of a show that embodies this message and helps to redefine what it actually means to be a family. Oh. They are accepting. A frequent lesson from this show is that it's to be accepting or inclusive of others in terms of difference and embracing your own unique situation in regards to types of households. When the conflict surrounds Arnold's untraditional family, the main characters find ways to overcome their differences in order to backlash against what others believe to be the perfect family and prove that their family counts despite all the conflict that they might have. So Hey Arnold gave an example of a family that diverged from the nuclear archetype, but in the 1990s, portrayals of the nuclear family did exist, just minus the perfection. Here I will show you a clip from the series Rocko's Modern Life. In this episode, Rocko, the main character who is the wallaby, is invited by his best friend Heifer, who is a cow, to his family's home for dinner. Here you'll see a rather imperfect nuclear family, but perfect in the way that they're inclusive of their son.
So, son, how was school today?
I quit school 2 years ago.
What?
We were afraid to tell you.
See? I told you you'd get mad.
Stop fighting. I can't take it. No one's fighting, dear.
Sounds like fighting to me. You're a loser. Why can't you be more like Heifer?
What, a 600-pound cow?
He's not a cow. He's a steer.
Stop it. No one's fighting, dear.
I've got to change for practice.
Be back in time for dinner.
Yeah. One. That's my ride.
Virginia!
We were afraid to tell you.
See? I told you you'd have a cow. No offense, Heifer.
He's a steer!
So, Rocko, you and Heifer have been friends a long time?
Oh, yes. And it's quite interesting. In all the years I've known him, he never once told me he was adopted.
Is that true?
Well, yes, honey, you...
So that awkward reaction is the result of not actually letting Heifer know that he's kind of in the family, which is good, because that would make things really weird for him. So in this clip, we take the position of Rocko, sitting on the couch having an outside look on his family. From our perspective, we see that the family is actually patriarchal, with a father who doesn't accept everyone in his family necessarily, but he is still accepting of his son, Heifer the cow. Being wolves, they are in a sense higher in the food chain, which is sort of used as a metaphor for a superior race. We obtain that connotation through the several racist remarks the older wolf makes when he meets Rocko throughout the episode. The idea that they avoid all differences in race or species for the sole purpose of maintaining their family relationship again redefines family beyond being related and existing in a perfect harmony. The family being nuclear and all of the wolves' caricatures are external after realizing the true lesson being that they all love each other nonetheless. Later on, Heifer searches for his actual blood-related father and is greeted by this next message.
Hey, quit bawling.
Dad?
Yeah, you heard me. Knock off the crying. That's not my grave. I'm not even dead. I'm living in Canoga Park with Joyce here. Say hello.
Hi, nice to meet you. You should visit us sometime.
Mom? That's not your mom. Your mom's a car seat in Illinois. Why don't you leave me alone? I'm tired of you kids coming around looking for your dad. I've had a million kids that look exactly like you. Berkeley, Joyce, come here and clean up after me. I
I guess no one loves me.
Hey, aren't you that guy on the milk cartons? A family of wolves was by here looking for you. Seemed real upset. Matter of fact, had a beaver with them.
Heifer, you're back! Oh, Heifer, where did you go?
I went looking for my real family, but I found out that you're my real family after all.
Son, come here.
Okay, so before I analyze that clip, I want to discuss media's effect on the tolerances of children. It is believed that kids do not receive pro-social messages from media without it being obvious and salient. The awkwardness felt at the dinner table when Heifer is revealed to be adopted, accompanied by the silent stares, and the very concept of adoption seems pretty salient when considering that these topics are new to animation or new in the way that it is so blatant. Considering that these topics are indeed kind of extreme, especially with the negative portrayal of Heifer's father. The lessons of media targeting children also become more digestible when they are identifiable. And surely the scene of Heifer searching for his father resonates with a portion of the audience since, as we can see from this quote, fatherless child percentages rose from 17.5 to 36.3% from 1960s to the 1990s. The notion that the perfect family not having to be related to each other was a constant pro-social message featured in these programs, amongst other positive messages that forwarded alternative representations of the American family. Families had single parents, which is seen here with this episode of the Rugrats. In the same show, the mother, Betty, and her husband seems to have swapped gender roles. She wears the female gender symbol on her sweater as if to remind her that she is still a woman despite her masculinity. And here's a show called Rocket Power, which may have some hints of an implicit homosocial narrative, since the two characters together raise two children with the absence of a female figure. However, whatever shape or size these families come in are actually irrelevant. The ideas proposed in these shows is that the core purpose of the family remains regardless of its shape or form. And without a doubt, these are the results. Millennials are indeed more receptive than their elders to these newer patterns of behavior. Millennials may not be entirely approving of certain structures, but they seem to be very indifferent to difference. When you are taught that difference should not really matter as long as the family is loving, then you should feel no other way. It was once proposed that intolerant beliefs are born through distinguishing what is different. But one constant concern is that with all these alternative portrayals of nuclear family, does that mean that media makers and audiences are actually ostracizing the nuclear family? And to that, I would say no, not exactly. Satirical animated sitcoms like Family Guy and The Simpsons mark the rebirth of the animated family sitcom. These series, though, are not entirely homage, but instead a lampoon on previous notions of ideal families. The notion of a perfect family is instead subverted and replaced by an image of a still nuclear, but less unrealistic family. Rather than focusing on being the best, the animation of the latter era show the near impossibility to match the perfect type of family, the perfect mom, or the perfect dad, and shows how perfection can be negotiated to fit one's own family. And here's one final clip from a show I'm sure we're all familiar with, Le Family Guy.
Look, everybody, I feel really bad about what I did. I don't know, I just saw one chance I'd ever have to give my family the things they deserve. I guess I screwed it up. I cheated the government, and worst of all, I lied to my wife. And she deserves better. I'm sorry, honey.
Mr. Griffin, I think your words have touched us all. I'm sentencing you to 24 months in prison.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes?
Look, my husband may be a bit thoughtless at times. He may even be downright, well, stupid, but I know he only accepted that money because he wanted to be a good husband and father. But what he needs to remember is that we love him, and no matter what, I'll always stand by him.
I love you too, honey.
That was very moving, Mrs. Griffin.
Okay. So, Peter, the main character on trial, was relieved from work, and this threatens his role as the breadwinner of the household. But when he goes on welfare, he is able to provide for his family even better than ever. In this instance, father does not actually know best since it causes him legal issues, but the fact that selfless patriarchal notions influenced him is kind of beautiful in itself. Even here, the idea that families just require that genuine love regardless of the model is the same even when using the ubiquitous image of the nuclear family. So to hurry and conclude, this is the message carried on by what I define as a generation of animated tolerance. In the 1960s, families together viewed the Jetsons and the Flintstones and learned how to become the perfect nuclear family via broadcast television. However, the addition of Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network in the 1990s introduced animation dissimilar to the series before them. And lastly, a little after a decade, satirical animation targeted these same viewers. The generation of animated tolerance was raised on alternative visions of family, and they are also socially aware of the positives and negatives of a patriarchal nuclear family and do not completely abandon the idea. Therefore, the generation of animated tolerance is not defined by their idea of the perfect family, but is defined by their agency and inclusive nature when defining family to fit for themselves. And that is my ending.